Attorney General Maura Healey. Please step up. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
We already went over the ground rules. We're hoping to do this in 25 minutes, 6 questions, roughly 2 minutes each. If you have anything to say to open up, I would welcome that. But I'll be asking the questions, and then there's a few community leaders who are going to provide some real context to those questions. So, first of all, thank you for joining us. First, let's talk about displacement. What policies and programs will you adopt to slow and stop gentrification and displacement, especially for working class and communities of color who are often on the wrong end of these forces?
Well, thank you, Simone. And let me just say, hey, Linda. Let me just say a couple things. Jesus.
There we go.
First of all, great to see all of you. I'm a huge fan of our CDCs. Always have been as your Attorney General, and I promise you that under a Healey Driscoll administration, you will have our full support. A little bit, yeah. A little bit, just if I may, Simone. I'm somebody who never expected to be here today. I never grew up imagining that I would run for office. I grew up in a small town in New Hampshire. My folks are both from Massachusetts. But my brothers and sisters and I, there are 5 of us, raised mostly by a single mom who put herself back to work as a nurse when my parents split up. And I remember, how hard she worked, multiple jobs to keep us together and to keep things moving. Real big involvement by our grandparents, and frankly, community. We'd have people who would drop off clothes at our house, even dropped off a car one time. Worked my way through school, waitress through high school, college, and law school. Ended up, as some may have seen at this point, I did play a little basketball along the way. And I was fortunate to get to Massachusetts for college, where I also got to play ball and then played a couple years overseas. The only thing relevant about that is that I was a point guard, which is obvious because I'm 5'4". That's about all you can be. But the job of the point guard, it's not about points scored. It's about the assists. That's the statistic that matters for a point guard, and it's about teamwork. And I say that because this is about teamwork. To solve the urgent problems of today around housing, transportation, economic development, ensuring that every family in this state has an opportunity and every child has a shot. It's only going to come about if we work together as a team. So let me tell you what I think we need to do around some of the very, very real concerns around gentrification and displacement. And housing is the top issue, I think, around the state as we deal with issues of affordability. I think we need to do several things. Number one, we need to support existing programs like RAFT. As Attorney General, we worked hard to advocate for more resources for RAFT. As governor, I will make sure that we are expanding resources for RAFT. We know how important that is. And it's not just the money, but it's also language access and what we're doing online and how easy or not it is for people to actually navigate that. And I think we need to do more education, because still not enough people who are eligible are taking advantage of that. So that's the first thing. The other thing we need to do is support our voucher programs. When I was head of the Civil Rights Division and did a lot of housing discrimination cases, I went up against property managers and landlords who would discriminate against families simply because they had vouchers. Look, I, as governor, want to expand our vouchers because we know this is really, really important. So whether it's HBP or MRVP, we need to increase the resources there because already we have more people who need assistance, and it's only growing as we've seen through this housing crisis. So with eligibility, far exceeding availability, we've got to change that. I want to work with mass housing on the Navigator program, right? So that we're making sure that there's a way to easily, literally navigate that process, that it's streamlined, that it's user-friendly. I also want to work on things like tax credits. That includes a child tax credit that I proposed. You know, this is all about making life more affordable for people. I also think when it comes to displacement and gentrification, you know, I'm fortunate to be here today in the heart of the Commonwealth. This is a big state with unique regions, each with their own needs. So it's not just about, for example, new housing, it's about the preservation of existing housing. And so putting money into rehabilitation and renovation, these are also really important investments that we need to make.
Thank you so much for that. I just want to say, as I look at this crowd and that last event with people from all over the state talking about all the work they're doing, it's amazing. It's an incredible resource. For me as a journalist who's trying to understand what's happening across Massachusetts, it's all right here. And I just want to say thank you for that. Before we go to the next question, we're going to invite a community member to share their story about dealing with high housing prices. So Ines Armando from Lawrence Community Works, if you could step up.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Ines Armando. I'm here to talk about my experience with Lawrence Community Work. I had participated in several programs. One of the most important for me was the IDA, with which I was able to say to buy my first house in 2019. About that, I was won the lottery. Thank you for the program. The Lawrence Community Work is an important program for the out community. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ines. This story is representative of so many families across the state. What will you do to close the racial home ownership gap in Massachusetts? And more specifically, will you continue the state's Commonwealth Builder Program and take other steps to increase access to home ownership?
Well, thank you for sharing your story, Inez, and I'm so glad that you were able to purchase a home, and we need to find ways for more and more people around this state to purchase homes. I also want to give a shout out to Lawrence and Sueños basketball. Do you have a game today? Do you have a game? All right, you tell Coach I said hi. I got to play basketball with them a few months ago. Love the Sueños program. So here's what we need to do. We need to, begin with the recognition that in this country, when you talk about accumulating wealth, there's only 3 ways to get there. You can win the lottery, you can have somebody die and you inherit it, or you have a home. And this is why we have such disparities, economic disparities along racial lines, is because of what's happened through decades, centuries of systematic racism and the effects. And we live with the vestiges of that every single day. And so how do we address that? What do we need to do so that more people have access to the ability to buy a home? We've got to expand the down payment programs and the closing cost assistance programs. All these things. We need to expand housing counseling services. I support having tenants, housing organizations, the business community establish things like match savings programs. These are all things that I think are really important. I also think that we need to adjust the way we do things. If people are able to earn a little more money, it shouldn't have the effect of booting them out of a program. We've got to fix the way we do that. I think our incentives are wrong there, right? We want to reward that and not penalize people as they are, making life better for them and their families. So that's something we've got to do. And then the family self-sufficiency program, which I've come to learn a little bit more about. This is matching federal funds with career and financial counseling. I know how important that is. I've obviously spent a lot of time as your Attorney General going after predatory schools and predatory lenders, and I can't say enough about the better job we need to do in this state in making sure that people have access to that kind of counseling. So those are some of the things that I want to support, because I know how imperative it is to increase the opportunity for home ownership. And right now, we're really at a crisis point. And you look at what's happening with rents, it's all the more imperative. But, obviously, we've got to grow a lot of housing stock. I'm sure we're going to talk about that because we need way more supply across the board, across the state.
Thank you. Earlier today, MACDC and Linda Dorsina-Forey, former state senator, celebrated the 10th anniversary of the Community Investment Tax Credit, which provides a 50% tax credit for qualifying donations to CDCs. 50%. Governor Patrick signed it into law in 2012, and Governor Baker signed the legislation in 2018 to extend and expand the program. But it's now scheduled to sunset in 2025. Will you support legislation to extend the program and raise the cap?
What do you think? Of course I will. And kudos to Senator Dorsina-Forey for her vision and leadership. It's proven to be such a sensible and worthwhile investment, exactly where we need to be. So we're going to continue that, if I have that opportunity.
Okay. Now let's move on to climate in the context of housing. This gets complicated because the state has ambitious climate goals, and a lot of that has to do with decarbonizing our housing stock. So our housing is among the oldest in the country, as we all know. How would you advance the decarbonization of housing, and particularly so that people of color and working class communities, as well as tenants, not just homeowners, to ensure they're not left behind?
I just go back to an experience I had just a couple days ago. I think it was a couple days ago. I can't quite remember because a lot gets packed in. But it was a couple days ago. We were up in Lawrence, actually. And some may remember that after the horrific Columbia Gas explosions, my office went after Columbia Gas. We got a $60 million settlement with that company that effectively got it out of Massachusetts, provided $15 million in forgiven utility bills for residents in the Merrimack Valley, and importantly, set up something we call the Merrimack Valley Renewal Fund, put $40 million into that. The other day, I got to visit something called the Stone Mill in Lawrence. It's a building that was pre-Civil War. And the reason I'm telling you this is because the Stone Mill renovation shows exactly what is possible. Sure, things are challenging, but they're doable. And let me tell you what happened at Stone Mill. Developer went in, got some credits from the state. My office kicked in about $3 million from that settlement that helped them think about how to develop what is now going to be 86 units of affordable housing, all electrified, the whole building. No gas pipes coming in and out, it's all electrified. It's also going to create a number of jobs because with this project, at least 30% of all the construction work will be performed by minority and women-owned businesses. And so, it's just, to me, an example of how you can do the work of advancing a clean energy imperative, addressing issues of housing injustice and environmental injustice and disparities that have persisted. You can do it. And we could do project after project after project like this in the state, working together. I also think that, a few things from my climate plan. When I put up my climate plan, let me just say this. I started work in government after I left private practice as head of the Civil Rights Division. When I became Attorney General, my mission didn't change. And every single division, every department in that office, all 600 people strong, we apply an equity lens to everything that's done, whether it's Medicaid or environmental or consumer insurance, healthcare. The reason I mention this is because this is always the lens through which I see things. And this is the lens through which we must see things across state government. So my climate plan, it means convening the Environmental Justice Advisory Council. It means making sure that ARPA and infrastructure funding is going in specifically to address projects, including projects that will assist underserved communities and pockets of environmental injustice that persist around the state. It means supporting the clean energy improvements in places like public housing, schools, municipal buildings, converting the fleets of these dirty fuel vehicles over to clean energy. A lot is possible. It also means, looking at where agencies cite and do work and approve work, that we're doing that with that equity lens. One of the things I did as Attorney General in my office was require that the Energy Siting Facilities Board have an environmental justice advocate representation on that. Because for far too long, we know where all the factories and polluting, entities get plopped down. And it is absolutely disproportionately in low-income communities and communities of color. And that is going to change.
Thank you. So before question 5, I want to invite Elmer Melendez up. I also want to share a story. I know Elmer, just happens to be, thanks Joe for making the connection, and the people at Fitchburg CDC. Elmer told me about a year and a half ago he was rehabbing an old bank and turning it into a restaurant, that he was planning to open 3 more restaurants on top of the 2 he had by this year. I just asked him if he had done that, and he said he's opened 2 more and working on the 3rd. So give it up for him.
Good morning again. Yes, again, Elmer Melendez. We hard worker people from Fitchburg. We have, I started with a small brick oven pizza in 2005, 2007, and little by little we went working, get in love in the city of Fitchburg, open a new diner over there, and after that I was comfortable. And a couple of years ago, I said, you know what, let's do it, and do it right. We bought a building with my wife, rehab it, put a Mexican restaurant. We doing a new restaurant too in Fitchburg. It's an Italian restaurant, Dario's. And last September, we opened a steakhouse too in Fitchburg. And now actually, Worcester, we have one restaurant under construction here in Worcester, which you guys are invited to come over. Period. They gotta make the commitment to come to Fitchburg. We really need it. And that's the reason I'm here, because as small business owners, we need the tools, we need the systems. Like you said earlier, it's a teamwork. We cannot do it without the support of all the communities. I appreciate what New View have done for us. CDC is very important to support, especially North Central Mass. I advocate a lot for North Central Mass because I'm working over there. There's a lot of good people over there. We need to create better jobs, like I said. We have to create more opportunities, housing opportunities. And it's painful sometimes, but I don't planning to give up. We're resilient. And it's a lot of good communities around, a lot of good people around. And I really believe we need that support from the government. We really need to create more jobs, create better quality of life for a lot of people over there that they need it. And I want to see what you're proposing for us to helping us in this North Central Mass. Thank you.
Thank you, Elman. My follow-up question. Governor Baker.
By the way, I'm sorry, my friend. A commitment. You got to come over to Tacos Tequilas in Fishburne, okay? You better say yes. There's
Do
a
we
lot
have
of
that
people
commitment?
watching here. Yes? And
Your
what the
whole,
other-
you
the
know,
other
as
man?
you're talking, you were making me so hungry. I plan to. Now, is that in Fitchburg or is that the one here? I'm going to Fitchburg. As soon as I leave here, I'm actually going to Fitchburg. Yeah. So we'll make sure we well, I'm not that
3
hungry,
restaurants.
but I'll definitely
Breakfast,
hit
lunch, and
one. It's okay. Well, we'll make sure we get the details.
All right.
Thank you.
Governor Baker implemented the largest small business COVID relief program in the country, actually, and oversaw a major expansion of the Small Business Technical Assistance Program and the state's investments in community development finance institutions, which provide capital to small businesses. How would you help small and micro businesses, especially those owned by underrepresented entrepreneurs?
Well, it was so great to hear your story and your story of resilience and all that you were able to do through a really challenging time. I know that, well, first of all, our small businesses are the lifeblood of community. They provide the fabric to community. They're a huge economic engine and driver. Second, our small businesses definitely need more support. I think given the challenges today, especially with inflation and supply chain, workforce, I know that's been a hugely challenging issue, just finding staff and workforce. These are things that we need to work on, and the government actually absolutely needs to support. I will continue all of Governor Baker's programs supporting small businesses. I also want to add my own, create an Office of Economic Assistance. I don't know if I'll call it that or something else, but here's what it's going to do. It's going to work directly with small businesses and micro businesses, providing some of the infrastructure, the support. I think during COVID, we saw, for example, the challenges that so many of our small businesses faced when it came to accessing PPP. Not everybody has access to the lawyers, to the accountants, the banking relationships. So we need to shore up that infrastructure. That's one thing that I want to do as governor. The other thing relates to workforce. Kim Driscoll and I put forward an idea for a program called Mass Reconnect. This is modeled on something that other states like Michigan is already doing. But basically, it's working with community colleges so that people 25 years or older who may be out of the workforce can be brought back into the workforce by getting free education for specific workforce certificates, degrees, and the like. And I think this is a really important initiative to help with the workforce issues that we are facing. And finally, it's about the money. It's capital, right? It is about capital, and you either have it or you don't. And so we've got to find ways as a state to make sure that those lines of capital are available, particularly for minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses. That's what we need to do. I've also been struck by people like yourself who opened businesses during COVID. I was with a small business owner, a woman who opened 2 restaurants in Holyoke during the pandemic. So this is good stuff's happening. And as with everything, you can have the initiative, you can bring the work ethic, and the passion, but you also need to have the capital and you need to have support. And we will be better, we will be stronger economically as a state if the state is working as a partner in making sure that happens.
He really did. He took over this bank that was vacant right in the center of Fitchburg and turned it into a restaurant that he says is going very well today.
I bet. And
during the
that's
worst part of the pandemic.
That's the kind of thing, it means so much to community, right? You have people who are going there, it changes the other storefronts, makes much more possible. I totally agree. I totally agree.
He said we can't do these things by ourselves. We have to come together and make them happen. A quick follow-up to that last one. Would you support the expansion of SBTA, small business technical assistance, in the state budget from the current $7 million to $10 million?
Absolutely, I support expanding it. Absolutely. I just said this is where we need to make these investments, right? It'll benefit all of us, but the need is certainly there.
Our last question here is going to come from MACDC's board chair, Angie Liu, who's the executive director of Asian CDC in Boston.
Thank you. So for the last 8 years, MACDC has enjoyed a collaborative working relationship with Governor Baker, where every year the MACDC board got to meet with him and his team to check in on housing, displacement, community, and other economic development issues. And it was during one of those meetings several years ago that our board gave him a copy of the book, The Color of Law. He actually read it, kudos to him, which he has talked about on many occasions. That was what really prompted him to launch a whole program to close the racial homeownership gap. Now, if you become our next governor, we want to know, will you commit to continue that partnership with MACDC by regularly meeting with us in our field?
Absolutely, Angie. I look forward to that if elected. I absolutely am committed to that. I know Kim Driscoll is as well. I read that book, Richard Rothstein. It's a good read and a troubling read, and my reference to decades, centuries of systemic racism, much of it at the hands and through the hands of government, through policy and regulation. This is what we're dealing with today. So it is important to have that perspective because, we can deal with these issues. We can deal with and make right the disparities that have persisted for far too long. But it requires intentionality of effort. It requires energy day after day, and importantly, it requires that kind of teamwork that we were just talking about, and the recognition that our destinies are tied to one another. And in a time in this country where there are too many looking to divide us, too many looking to weaponize information, weaponize and exploit human beings for their own perceived political gain, we in Massachusetts need to be strong. We need to remember who we stand with, what we stand for, the freedoms, the rights, hard fought, that we will continue to hold on to and never ever go back on, and find the way that in this dark hour, in places, that we are going to continue to punch above our weight and deliver for people here in this state. That's what I want to do with all of you. That's what you all do day in and day out. And I thank you for the opportunity to have a conversation with you. And I know Kim Driscoll, I can speak for her. She sends her regards. We sure hope to have an opportunity to partner with you in the weeks and months and years ahead. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, MACDC. Thank you, Simone.
Maura Healey, thank you so much.
All right, great.